After nearly a decade of frustration, are the Panthers finally on track? I'll answer that question among other listener questions on this weekly Wednesday mailbag edition of Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. We're back once again on a Wednesday, and what do? Every Wednesday throughout the entirety of the regular season, and dare I say, playoffs. Don't want to jinx it. Knocking on wood, it may be faux wood. I hope that's not a jinx as well. Going to throw some salt on my shoulder later on, but on Wednesdays, we do the weekly Wednesday mailbag, which means that you at me or you DM me over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council. And then on Wednesdays, I answer your questions. Only got 3 this week because I suppose there wasn't a game on Sunday and y'all are also taking a bye week for the mailbag. Now, granted, 2 weeks ago during Thanksgiving week, I didn't do one because it was a short week and also I was exhausted. I didn't really want to get into the whole Bryce Young and Dave Canales of it all, and rightfully so, as we saw it happen last time out against the Rams. All is well. Carolina's tied for first place in the NFC South with 4 games left to go. Things are going great, especially when you consider what a lot of people expected going into the season and where the Panthers were 2 years ago, which leads me to the first question that we have on today's show. Tyler saying, do you think it's fair to say that even with all the controversial decisions at times, that it seemed that the Panthers finally have the right people in place in terms of Canales and Morgan? Is that a fair assumption? This team is honestly far more competitive than I thought it would have been simply by just looking at the team on paper. I still feel like a lack of a big weapon on offense, and there's definitely some areas of need on the defensive side of the ball. Are people just too hard on them in terms of expecting immediate results? Well, yes. To your last question there, Tyler, we live in a microwave instant gratification society. People want things to happen instantly, and I'm guilty of it as well. I am also the person sitting here as a North Carolina Tar Heel football fan who wants Bill Belichick fired. Now, should I be more patient? Certainly, but look at his age and all the mistakes that he made. I never wanted that to be the hire in the first place, but it is a little ridiculous that after one season that you would want someone to be fired when they are one of the greatest coaches of all time at the NFL level, not at college, but still, it would make sense to want to sit back and to be a little bit more patient. Whether I like it or not, he's going to be back in Carolina this year. So hopefully it works this fall in Chapel Hill. I doubt it, but hopefully it works. But that's me doing exactly the same thing that y'all do a lot of times by just not being patient enough with individuals. And when Bryce Young was drafted here, we talked about at that time, you got to give it 3 years. You got to see through 3 seasons whether he is the right guy. And after that, you have to make a decision, which you're going to make come May. We're still a long way away from May being here in 2026, where they decide either to exercise or decline the 5th-year option on his rookie contract. And right now, I don't know what they're going to do, but there's plenty of examples. As sports fans, fan is short for fanatic, where we're not willing to be patient and we want immediate results. Now, I get it with this organization. I grew up here, y'all. So I've seen all that's happened in this organization. I understand that it's been since 2015 since the Panthers won the division. And what a year that was. It's been since 2017 since they've been to the playoffs. It's been 8 years, 7 seasons without a playoff appearance. You get sick and tired of the Matt rules selling you 7 years and BS JC lyrics. Got them marked out one down. You get tired of that. You get tired of not hiring guys like Steve Wilkes who understands the culture, then bringing in Frank Reich for 11 games before he gets fired. You're sick of it. I totally understand it. But if you look at the two organizations that David Tepper owns right now, they're both on the right track. Now, I don't really follow Charlotte FC all that much. Me personally, I could never sign up for a team that David Tepper himself decided to bring to Carolina. Y'all can do that. My buddy Brett does it. I think that's nuts, but I think it's also great for the city. But me personally, I'm a Liverpool supporter. I don't need an MLS team. That's just not me. If I had an MLS team, it would be my friends out there with Nashville SC, who I've known for a long time at this point in time. So when looking at that organization, David Tepper had a long time to scour the entire globe for a coach, for a manager, and he selected Miguel Angel Ramirez. And that lasted 14 matches, didn't last a very long time, as he was not the right guy. Now, David then decided, all right, let's elevate his assistant in the interim, Christian Latanzio, to be the guy, and that did not last long either. But then after that, he landed on Dean Smith, not the legendary basketball coach, may he rest in peace, from the University of North Carolina, but Dean Smith, who took Aston Villa from the championship to the Premier League and kept them up. Dean Smith was a really good manager, at least in England. He might not be a top tier, like a Man U or a Man City or a Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea type of manager, but he's a solid manager, especially in the MLS. And since they hired him, they gone to the playoffs the last 2 years. Now, MLS playoffs are weird and all that, but they've still have finally become a competent, competitive organization. Are they at the top yet? No, but they're headed in the right direction. And having Wilfred Zaha, it's got to be pretty awesome, right? So you look at that, they've started to get things figured out. It took, and it has taken a lot longer on the football side of things. You look at it, Tepper, GM-wise, he kept Marty Herney just so he could learn the ropes, have a buddy there, then eventually moved on from Marty, brought in Scott Fitterer, felt like that was the right decision. Then obviously that did not work out. Then he elevated Dan Morgan to the position. And so far, looking at his draft class this year, and even last, Dan's doing a pretty good job. Some of the trades he's made, some of the signings, I think Dan's done a good job so far through the first 2 seasons, just short of 2 seasons as general manager here in Carolina. Then you look at head coach. He kept Ron Rivera, which I thought was the right decision, and then moved on from Ron, hired Matt Rule. Obviously, that did not work. Then brought in Frank Reich instead of keeping Steve Wilkes. That did not work out. And now they brought in Dave Canales, who last year he allowed the autonomy to make the decision there at the beginning of week 3 to bench Bryce Young. And we saw how that team in the second half of the season, when Bryce came back in, how they played and just a little momentum that they built heading in to 2025. And now we look at them, while they started off poorly, they've gotten blasted a couple of times. They have been a team that is in it. They're 7-6. They're in control of their playoff fate. They are far and away a lot better than they were even this time a couple of years ago, when in 2022 they were playing for a chance to win the division as well against Tampa. They've come a long way from even that point in time, and especially where they were 2 years ago. You look at quarterback. They've gone from Cam to Teddy to Sam, with little Cam baked in there as well, a little PJ in there to Baker to now Bryce Young, and they've stuck with him at this point in time. So it's taken a minute for Tepper to hire the right people and allow those people to do their jobs and to entrust in these players that they believe in them and let them do what they do best as well on the field. They've increased their win total from 2 wins a couple of seasons ago to 5 last year to 7. And it can get very close. I mean, I would think 8 should happen on Sunday, but you can't just go ahead and say it's going to happen based on what happened the last time they were in this position and lost to the Saints. But 9 is certainly on the board. And if they get to 9, and it's the right 9 wins as far as the next 2 games coming up, or next 2 out of 4 games coming up here, they can be division champs. So how could you not agree that they are headed in the right direction, that they have the right people in place in Dave Canales and Dan Morgan, and also Brant Tillis and all the scouts and coaches within this organization? A lot of talk about firing Ruggiero Rivero early this season, even throughout the entirety of last season. And I understand it's a meritocracy. How can you have the worst scoring defense in the history of the NFL, granted, in a 17-game season, and keep your job? But it looks like Dave made the right decision by sticking with his man. So, yeah, I do think, Tyler, that a lot of people expect immediate results and that people aren't willing to be patient enough, and that there have been controversial decisions. But you look at it, it seems like they're making the right decision so far through the second year of this rebuild, where they may actually break down the door and be a playoff team in 2025. So I'm guilty of it. You're guilty of it. We're all guilty of not being patient enough when we should be, even if you've been waiting a long time for the Panthers just to be competent and get their act together. And here's the thing. When I asked y'all back on Labor Day, I think it was maybe the day after Labor Day, I asked y'all, what are your expectations for the season? I had people like Moritz, my buddy up in Germany, saying that they wanted him to go 8-9 and not feel totally devastated in September and October. Joe said as long as we're still in the hunt in the back third of the season and see notable improvements from key long-term players, then I consider that success. Well, Joe, successful season. Brody said 7 wins. Last year, we were inches from being a 7-win team, and here they are now. They're already at 7 wins, Brody, so they've already met your expectations. David said 6-11. You didn't have much faith until proven otherwise. I think you've been proven otherwise at this point in time. Alex said, I don't know about winning a playoff game, but I expect to win a division. And Alex, your expectations are so close to being met. Mia, optimistic side, says 9. Realistic says 7-10, 8-9. They're right there in your reality. Mia, just the guy, I didn't get his name, said 5 wins. Bryce will take baby steps, which in a way it's kind of been the case. The defense will continue to have improvement, or they'll continue to struggle against run, he believed. But he said, truth is, it's incredibly hard to reverse nearly a decade of absurdly poor football. So he's patient. He understands how things work, but his expectations have obviously already been reached. Robert said 4-3. No names on defense. J.C. Horn still no name. Derek Brown still no name. Look at where they at right now. And then Zach said, the NFC feels deeper now. NFC East, NFC North gets wild cards. So going to take a miracle to win a division. I think they win 7 games realistically. Unfortunately, well, they're at 7. And this may be all they win. But they're right there, potentially pulling out the miracle and winning a division. So as far as just what people expected, when we went over it back around Labor Day, and we're going over it now, they've either exceeded or met or approaching even the most positive people's expectations this season. So again, how can you not believe that Dave and Dan and Brant and all involved are the right men for the jobs based off of the results that we've seen last year leading into where we're at right now in early December, where the Panthers are tied for first place in the NFC South and have full control of their playoff fate. You got to love it. Now, because Panthers may be a playoff team and they're not going to be the top 10, it appears, this year, that's going to hinder their ability to select maybe some top-tier talent in the draft, which I typically wouldn't talk draft, but there was a lot of questions, and I am actually interested in the question that I got coming up. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. You know, there's no reason to let big wireless drain your wallet, especially during the holidays. Right now, Mint Mobile is running their best deal of the year. All of their unlimited plans are 50% off. That means you can lock in 3, 6, or even 12 months of unlimited premium wireless for just $15 a month. It's the easiest way to take your overpriced phone bill and give it the full Scrooge treatment. And what makes this even better is how simple Mint makes the switch. No contracts, no nonsense, just real savings and real quality service. Switching to Mint lets you keep your same coverage for a lower price. The service is fast and super reliable, even on the go. Turn your expensive wireless present into a huge wireless savings future by switching to Mint. Shop Mint Unlimited plans at mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. That's mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. Limited time offer. Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12 months. Plan required. Taxes and fees. Initial plan term only. Greater 35 gigabytes, greater than 35 gigabytes may slow when the network is busy. Cable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com. Hey, got something for y'all that just dropped here on Locked On. You've been making Locked On Panthers your first listen of the day, and you've been making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the club today and get Locked On Panthers with no interruptions, member-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonpanthers.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. Really cool opportunity for y'all to be able to interact with me, be able to get the ad-free of the show. So go check that out again, lockedonpanthers.supercast.com. Hopefully everybody enjoys all the content you got going on there, even more stuff from the Locked On Podcast Network that you can have access to for $5 a month or $50 a year. Over now to Harvey. as we look at the weekly Wednesday mailbag. Harvey saying, where are the Panthers going to find an elite pass rusher or a dominant middle linebacker now that they are out of the top tier talent pool of the draft? This worries me because once you start winning, your draft position goes down and you have to make those picks matter even more. Do you have faith in Morgan to deliver? All right, I'll catch you on YouTube. All right, so here's the thing. I don't think people right now should be worried about the draft. First and foremost, but also I don't think you should be worried about the teams winning too much. And now you're not going to be in the top 10. The battered Panthers syndrome. That's what's happening here. I'm going to rip that off of A&M fans or battered Aggie syndrome. We've got battered Panthers syndrome that people are just sitting here like, oh, whoa, we're winning. What's going on? I'm used to losing. Are we sure we don't want to be in the top 10? Are we sure we can't just draft another top 10 pick? Come on, guys, smile. The sun was out in the afternoon today, but come on, be happy about where you're at. Be happy about potentially playing playoff football. It's been a long time, and I know it's been a long time because the brain rot, the battered Panther syndrome is showing up right now with you, Harvey. And I mean that with all love and respect, my guy. This is not to hate on you or to throw shade, but it's like, come on. So looking at tankathon.com, our favorite website, the Panthers currently sit 16th overall on the draft board, and Tampa is 19th overall. I don't know where they would end up finishing based off of things, but maybe be 19th. So right there in the late teens, that's where they're sitting, and maybe will fall once it's all said and done. Now, I don't know how deep this draft class is. I'll be honest with you. I have paid zero attention to who is going to be in the class and who is going to be potential guys that Carolina could go after. I've just been enjoying college football for what it is. I've been sitting here yelling at my Notre Dame fan about the Miami situation, that in your face, Notre Dame. But yeah, look, I do have faith in Dan Morgan to deliver. If you look at it, Nick Scorton's been pretty good this year. He took him in the second round. You also look in the first round, Terrell McMillan has been far and away the best receiver on this team. And thank God, if you were Carolina, that they took him, considering the injury to Coker after they traded away Adam Thielen and the lack of development that we've seen out of Xavier Legette this year. He's been a godsend. T-Mac has been for this team and for this offense and for Bryce Young as well. Also look at Lathan Ransom, who's got an opportunity to play this year. This has been a solid draft class for Dan Morgan. Trevor Etienne's helped out in the return game. And you look at just the signings that they've made, like Rico Dowdle, and even defensively. So when I'm looking at it, I do have faith that Dan Morgan can do a good job by identifying a talented player there in the late teens of the first round. You're still going to get a talented guy if you're going to be drafting in the top 20. I still think you can get a difference-making player in that spot. And when you look at the positions that you're worried about, Harvey, and I have a level of concern there as well, as far as pass rusher, middle linebacker. I don't know if they're going to get an elite pass rusher in this draft. I don't know if there is one. Again, I'm not really thinking about who those guys could be, but just looking at Matt Miller's top 50 prospects, Matt Miller of ESPN, who's been on the show before. He has David Bailey from Texas Tech by way of Stanford before they dropped that bag. That's because Troy Taylor got fired. Understand all that. But David Bailey, if you guys watched Texas Tech at all this season, which I'm sure you probably haven't up until Saturday when they took BYU behind the woodshed for the second time this season, disgusting pass rush. Like, that's the kind of stuff like hide your children. Scary kind of pass rush that they have this year. So he's a big piece of that. So that would be somebody interesting. Keldrick Falk, look at Auburn. That has been a great defense this year, led by DJ Durkin. Horrible person, but still great defense that they have there at Auburn. Keldrick Falk, been one of the best. I'm sure he was an all-SEC first-team player, just like the two guys you just drafted in Nick Scorton and Princey Amon-Mielen. So I don't think they're going to be able to get an elite guy. Maybe someone falls back there. They got Brian Burns in that territory. And I'm not saying that Brian necessarily is an elite player, but he's having a hell of a season in New York, and he is one of the highest paid edge rushers. So you know from experience that it is possible when drafting in that area to be able to get somebody who can be a high caliber player off the edge for you. So maybe it could be one of those guys, or they're just going to stick with the guys they already have and they're going to develop them. You look at, and I'll go even further than that, like DJ Wonnum is likely out the door after this season. The 0 sacks is what it is, but I don't think he's been that much of an impact player for them, even when he played in those 8 games last year and then this season so far. So I would expect he'd be gone. Pat Jones II, who's out for the season with a back injury, they owe him $1.75 million guaranteed. He does have a pretty high cap number of $10 million. The team currently has a projected cap space of $29.6 million, according to overthecap.com. So you'd want to find a way to get that number down. You could cut him. You could restructure if you wanted to. I think that would be wise to have someone who understands the scheme, especially if it's the same scheme. Jerry Rivera, his contract's up after this season. I would expect at this point in time he'd probably be back, but we'll find out later as far as the head coaching cycle and just what Dave Canales wants to do there, and even what David Tepper wants to allow there. I would think it would make sense to bring back another veteran. And I would also expect that in year 2, you're going to see that jump from guys like Princely and Nick. If you go get a Keldrick Falk or a David Bailey, in all likelihood, they're going to have the same kind of production we're seeing other rookies this year. And it's going to take them a year or maybe 2 to finally be ready to produce at a high enough level that will have you and everybody else satisfied here among the fan base and, of course, within the organization. Now, looking at linebacker, that is definitely a spot. I think that in the first round, just thinking about it right now, like offensive line, they're pretty good. Quarterback, looks like they're gonna, and the options aren't great. So whether Bryce plays well at the end or doesn't, I think he's probably back next year. Just depends on, is it the last year of his deal or is the 5th-year option? I don't know, but I'm expecting that he'll be back next season in whatever capacity it's going to be. In all likelihood, would be as a starting quarterback. So quarterback, you don't really need that. Tight end seem to be good there. Wide receiver, not in the first round for the 3rd year in a row. Then you look at running back, you're solid there. Defensive tackle, you're good there. Edge rusher, we just talked about that. Don't think they're going to do that. Corner seems to be good there with Mike, Jack, and JC. And safety, same thing right now. Maybe add another one. This when whatever happens with Nick Scott, we'll see. What you'll probably want to add another guy there. Maybe it's via the draft. I don't know, but I don't think that they're going to get Caleb Downs at 16 or 19 or wherever they're going to be at there in the late teens. He's going to be gone in the top 10, I would imagine. So, yeah, I look at linebacker probably being like the top need when just thinking about the draft right now. Maybe I'll spend more time thinking about this once we get to like closer to that time or fully in the offseason when my brain's wired that way. But yeah, like CJ Allen from Georgia, they have him 16th. Sonny Styles from Ohio State, he's right there in that range as well. Either one of those guys. Now, CJ Allen would be my preference because he is good, man. Like, that would be nice to have him. And then you have a 3rd-year linebacker in Trevin Wallace. I would also think it'd be wise for Carolina to bring back someone like Christian Roseboom because the free agent market has a bunch of guys who are over 30, and Roseboom will be that next season. I do see Nakobe Dean, a former Bulldog in his own right, could be an attractive option. He tore his patellar tendon last year in the playoffs. He just came back a couple weeks ago. He's only played in 8 games this year, but he was really good last season, helping the Eagles win that Super Bowl, even if he didn't play in the Super Bowl game. But yeah, that would be a guy I'm looking at as far as a second contract kind of player. If you can break the bank and get him, I'd be down with that. But Carolina hasn't really shown an appetite to spend a ton of money at linebacker. When you spend the most on the offensive line and you're spending a ton also on the defensive line, which those are where games are won or lost, you're probably not trying to spend that much at certain positions. And this position that you decide not to spend a ton on is linebacker, where they're spending the 3rd fewest amount of money was $7.2 million. The team that's spending the least is actually the Rams, who signed Nate Landman, who used to be with the Falcons, no relation to the show, used to be with the Falcons last year and the years prior to that. They signed him to like a $1 million free agency deal. He's been so good for them that they extended him 2 weeks ago. They got Omar Spates, who started off his career at Oregon State before transferring to LSU for his final year. They signed him to a UDFA, undrafted free agent contract last year, and he's been their starter. So you don't have to spend a lot of money. You don't even have to draft somebody to find a starting linebacker. But if they're looking at anything right now in the first round, I would think going out and finding that linebacker, finding, I suppose, that Luke Kuechly, if that's even possible, because that's a Hall of Fame guy. So let me not say that, but finding that next like Panther, like a John Beeson, does that work? Finding a John Beeson, like that would be really nice. They can do that. And someone like CJ Allen, I think, would make a ton of sense. And this is kind of part of the reason why you could have taken someone like Jalen Walker to be that guy for you as well. So that's where I stand as far as linebacker edge and looking ahead to how the Panthers could address that come the offseason in 2026. There is a player on the roster, though, who maybe could be that reclamation project and fulfill that role. At least someone's asking about him. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time with FanDuel. You can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. And I'm sure tomorrow night, when the Bucs and Falcons are playing on Thursday Night Football, y'all are going to be locked into all the live lines going on and hopefully winning some money and hopefully having Carolina in a position where if they beat the Saints, and then they beat the Bucs next week, they're division champs. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. One more question here on this weekly Wednesday mailbag edition of Locked On Panthers, hoping to have more mailbag questions next week. Now, there's plenty of questions I could ask, and I was looking at some of them that I did not get to last week, and that's how I was able to pull some for this week. Because typically it's like, oh, if I don't answer them now, then they're going to not really be worth answering because you might have your answer after that. I had people ask about potentially the game against Tampa being flexed into Sunday Night Football. They did not do that. They flexed, I believe, the Ravens and some other game instead. So that Carolina-Tampa game is going to be staying at 1 o'clock on Fox. And I would guess it's going to have a pretty good crew. So it's totally fine. And for my workflow, I'm cool with the 1 o'clock. I've already said, I'm on a record of saying this. My preference would be for them to win a division on Sunday night in week 18. After that, I would take a division title next week at home. But I would rather to have 2 weeks of not discussing games that technically don't really matter, even though I'm used to doing that by doing this show. Certainly, I'm used to it. But I would prefer for it to be week 18 on Sunday night for Carolina. And the way things are shaking out, that may be what happens. But we'll find out. Brody, though, has a question that kind of pertains to what we just talked about the linebacker spot here in Carolina moving forward. Brody's saying, I saw the Panthers sign Isaiah Simmons to the roster. He's my preferred pick over Derek Brown in the draft back in 2020. Obviously, I was wrong there, but now that we have him, do you think he could be developed into the middle linebacker the Panthers desperately need? Once upon a time, y'all, and I'll say this, Brody, a lot of us were wrong about Isaiah Simmons. I thought he was going to be a stud. Once upon a time during the pandemic, it was weird time, but the draft going on in Roger Goodell's living room, I guess his basement rather, wherever he lives, I think somewhere in New York. But yeah, it was going on in his basement. And I was doing a live show on NBC, the affiliate here, WCNC, with Nick Carboni, with John Ellis, and with Eugene Robinson. And we were all just talking about the draft heading up until the Panthers selected 8th overall. So I was on for about, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it was. And we're looking at every pick, and we're just discussing who should Carolina go after at that point in time. And linebacker was a spot that made sense since Luke Kuechly had just retired that offseason. Also, you looked at defensive tackle. That made a lot of sense for Carolina. And a lot of us were in between Isaiah Simmons or Derek Brown. I'm pretty sure, and I'm not trying to just cover my own ass, I really don't remember. I'm pretty sure I was more leaning on Isaiah Simmons. And then they drafted Derek Brown, which is awesome because I was cool with him as well. And then once they got Jeremy Chin, he fulfilled the role that Isaiah Simmons could have played in Carolina, and he did it really well. And of course, Isaiah Simmons did not pan out in Arizona. Now, Hassan Reddick, who came to Carolina later and was good, also didn't pan out in Arizona. So was it an Isaiah Simmons problem or was it a Cardinals problem? Now he's gone to New York. Now he's in Carolina. So he's on his third team. So it seems to be more of an Isaiah Simmons problem than he's in the wrong scheme with the wrong organization kind of deal. Now, it's not like he's been around the best organizations, if we're being honest, but still, you look back at that day, I think John was all over Simmons because Clemson guy wants a Clemson guy, had never drafted a Clemson player and still has not happened. Eugene was actually the one who was right. He was not asking for Derek Brown or Isaiah Simmons. He wanted Micah Parsons. So, yeah, the former NFL player picked out a Hall of Famer who he wanted Carolina to draft. So, you got that one, Eugene. So, obviously, John and I, we were wrong. Even if we wanted Derek Brown, would still be wrong because Micah Parsons was the choice and Carolina did not take him, which is totally fine. Fast forward to today, Derek Brown, again, is one of the highest paid defensive players in the league. Micah Parsons, who they did not take, is on a Hall of Fame track, and Isaiah Simmons is now on his third team. I personally do not think he's going to just have a career renaissance in Carolina and become that guy. It's possible. It would make for a nice Hallmark or Lifetime movie if that happens, but I don't think that's necessarily what's going to happen. Now, they are looking at him at linebacker. That's what he played when he played against the Rams last Sunday. You look at his position, he's listed as a linebacker. They don't want to play him at safety at this point in time, but they primarily looking at him as a special teamer, and it's very possible that he may not stick around. And I got to double check because I could have been talking about all of this and they could have already cut him from the team. He's still around. So, yeah, Isaiah Simmons still here, and we'll see. I don't believe he'll be that linebacker you're looking for, but it's certainly possible, I suppose, that could very well be the case. So, yeah, I'm happy for him to get this opportunity. He was an awesome player at Clemson, and congrats to Dabo for having another guy here in Carolina. But I don't see it at this point in time. All right, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, following the game on Sunday at me or DM me over there on Twitter or on Blue Sky at Julian Council. Get your questions in for next week's edition of the weekly Wednesday mailbag right here on the show. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole as always. Keep pounding, and I'll talk to y'all tomorrow as we're having Crossover Thursday with Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints.